This is America Offline with David Klein. Real conversations, authentic connections with digital wellness experts and mental game gurus. No texting, emailing, snapping, we ain't even tweeting. We're hopping online to talk mental health, mindfulness, and how good it feels to be offline. Coaching you up and how to take control of tech so tech doesn't take control of you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the America Offline podcast. I am here with Anya Pechko. Anya, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. And if you are live on Facebook, I apologize for the choppy video, but we are going to attempt to do a live video recording today. I'm also going to maybe try and set it up on Instagram too to see if this works out. But with that being
said,
what's that?
You're so techie.
I'm trying to become more techie in a world of tech here. We're all about digital mindfulness, and I'm just becoming more mindful of all this tech stuff and aware of it. So, Anya, while I'm setting this up, let's waste no time. Why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got to where you are today?
Of course, I'd love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I was really looking forward to speaking to you, and I love what you're doing with America Offline. So, congrats.
Thank you.
I am originally from St. Petersburg, Russia. I came here when I was 13, and so I had a very kind of digital-free upbringing. We did not grow up with technology, and we had what you may know as free range parenting and upbringing. Yep. I don't know if you're familiar with that phrase. Jonathan Haidt talks about this in his book, The Coddling of the American Mind. There's a movement called okay, great. Oh, boom. Yeah, great. So, all right, so preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So, I think technology, as great as it is, the fact that you could sit and, you're on the West Coast and I'm here in New York City and we can connect and it looks like you're in space right now. And,
I just keep talking, Anya. I'm going to get this set up as we go.
So I think it's awesome, but I also think that access to constant presence online and just constant access to tech and constant dopamine rush is just not been, has had a very negative effect and impact on our society and civilization. One of the things that I tend to talk a lot about in my practice is the concept of solitary confinement, right? Which is the worst form of punishment for men. Is when, if you're in prison and you're left alone and you're in a cell, people say you go crazy.
Right.
And so I think we've now kind of created these very small, isolated spaces of aloneness. And I think that is one of the reasons why we see the rise in mental illness, opiate use, and also self-harm among young people. I think we're disconnected. I think we're disconnected almost like from the mother source. We need human contact. So I started in this space about a year and a half ago, and I launched my ProjectBe, almost a year ago, so it's a year old. And in this last year alone, there have been multiple studies launched across America. I believe there's a 21-state study launched out of Seattle. Sorry, you're going to hear some background noise in the city.
No worries.
Going up by. So we're now studying the impact of what tech has had on young children's brains, and it's not good. It's very negative. It has impacted children's critical and thinking ability, which is really, really, kids start engaging and learning from the day they're born. So to the extent that we have...
Of course.
At the next block, there's a firehouse. So whenever there's a fire, this is what happens.
No worries.
And so I think that we've created, a really unhealthy way in which we are now living in. And so I think we have to start talking about ways in which we can balance our relationship with tech. Just the same way we balance our relationship with food, with alcohol, with sex, with shopping, with driving, with playing golf, with sports. I mean, anything, taking to the extreme, we have an addiction. And so I have been encouraging mostly parents really to look and address their lifestyle and their lifestyle choices pertaining to technology, because children learn by mimicking their parents. Mm-hmm. So to the extent that your child sees you glued to your phone, that is going to be their way of being in the world as well. And so we're seeing that. And I think, there's a big group of us that is trying to change it, and we're kind of rushing it, we're fighting against time and, really, really, really big tech companies.
Yeah. So Anya, you mentioned like the balance, right? And obviously the balance is important, but for you, like, what does that balance look like? Like, what is acceptable and, okay usage versus overusage, abuse? What is that balance? What does it look like?
That is a great question. So I love that you asked me that. So what I do in my life, in my profession is just very simple. I help you gain control of your time. Adam Alter wrote book Irresistible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that one too.
Yeah. So I have all
yeah. Yeah.
And on average, we're at 11-year loss over a lifetime
of just time spent in front of a screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary.
I to you, here's a phone, go to your room and stay there for the next 11 years. I mean, that's, you would just laugh at me and push me out of the way. So we really have to address. And so how I help people and myself, my family, friends around me is several reasons. First of all, it's raising awareness. Everybody in my circle kind of always tell me, just even after talking to me for an hour or two, they just become more aware. So that's one, right? To make any type of change, you just have to realize that something you're doing can be done better. So the second thing that is, I started kind of practicing leaving my phone at home and how, and it's very, comfort level of not being with your phone is different for everybody. So for me personally, in New York City, it started with walking my dog without my phone. And what I started noticing is, I used to know, I'm a big dog person, I've had dogs my entire life. I used to know every dog owner around 5-block radius, their names and their dogs. In the last 3 years, that completely changed. What I started noticing is people walking their dogs, they're completely lost in their phones. And so what happens is they drag their animal behind them. They're just completely detached. So what I started doing is I started leaving my phone at home when I'm walking my dog. My dog's reaction to being outside changed so much, David, I can't even explain to you. She's a skittish Italian greyhound. Mm-hmm. So what I didn't realize before, she was always looking to me for affirmation, but I was always too busy on my phone. I couldn't connect eye to eye with her. So now that I don't have my phone with me, I have a different dog. Because when she's hesitant, she looks at me and I just say, oh, okay, good girl, and we're walking. So that's been big. So those first 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the morning, no phone. What's interesting about that little exercise is about 21 days in, as it takes 21 days to change a habit, I realized that I would come home from a meeting and automatically take off my purse with my phone. And you just automatically know that you don't have a phone when you're walking your dog. So that's one. That's 15 minutes a day. My second thing is no phones in the bathroom. That's another observation I made. We all wash our hands when we come out of the bathroom, but we all have our phones with us. So how does that work? Right. Mm-hmm. So that's 2. There's another 10 minutes. Going food shopping. You don't need your phone when you're at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. So I stopped taking my phone to the stores with me. Mm-hmm. Meetings, dinners, family time, there's no phones at all. I know that some people have their phones turned upside down or, so I think it's really disrespectful. If I'm meeting with you, I'd like for you to know that, you have my full attention. I don't need my phone on the table. I don't need to see it. Now, there always has to be room for emergencies, access to kids, to our loved ones, people that are doctors, that are on call. So you really have to add that into your lifestyle. So the plan to detach is very specific. phone-free meals and family times is of the most importance. And a lot of this has been discussed with parents and their kids. They don't know what to talk about. So, as I mentioned earlier, I just finished an 8-week digital course for Teachables, where I literally help parents figure out what is the best way to spend free time with their kids to keep them engaged. And so it may seem that it's kind of like these one-offs here and there, but if you can start cutting down an hour a day, by the end of Sunday, you have 7 hours free a week where you can do whatever you want. And so when we start, and so one of the things that I often talk about, changing your relationship with your phone is changing your lifestyle, because you start being present more, and you're able to show up better for yourself and those who are around you, and then you start feeling much different. All of this is a physical difference in how you feel. Most people that I work with, first of all, they start exercising. Because the biggest thing when you speak to people is, you go to the gym, or do you, no, I just don't have any time. And I know right there and then, because every person, almost every 99.9% of people spend over 6 hours on the phone a day.
Yeah.
So when you start breaking down the time, and time is the most important currency and value which we have. There's nothing else. And so I think it's important to realize that Mitch Albom wrote this book, Tuesdays with Morrie, and it's a fascinating story. He talks about, at the end of life, you don't think about, vacations you could have taken, or trips you could have bought, or papers you could have graded, because he was a college professor. You think of all the times you didn't spend with people you love. And so, it's these little baby steps that I think accumulate, and you start to notice this visible way of how you feel, and particularly how others respond to you. Because people look at you and they see, I could see that you're listening to me. And I can also see by your body language, right? You're nodding. That affirms, even subconsciously, that tells me right there that that you value what I'm saying, right? Versus me just not knowing, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Oh God, am I saying something crazy? All of that, it's really important. I read this incredible article by this professor. I don't remember her name, but she said something. She said, try to give directions to anyone while sitting on your hands, right? So it's like, which way is west? You point, we jest, right? Like that's how children learn body language.
Right.
That's why when babies are breastfed, they look into the mother's eyes, they get oxytocin from that. And so it's very important. It's, I think we're missing human connection. And so I'd like to remind people of what it is and how to get back to it.
Totally. So Anya, you mentioned, and a lot of this can be started at a young age, right? Like we got to nip things in the butt kind of early, because as you mentioned in the talk before the show, your brain starts to become fully formed as you get older, and being able to sort of stop at a reverse course in those tracks is tough. So like, my question is, what are some of the ways that if I'm a parent and I'm listening to this, what are some of the ways that we can engage our kids about this, instead of, okay, no phone in the bathroom, no phone at the dinner table, no phone right when you wake up. Like, I feel like if we're constantly restricting them, it may be necessary to some extent, but constantly restricting them may be making things a little bit worse. What are some good ways that you found to engage your kids in a way so that they understand and they feel why it is so important to get on top of their technology interactions?
Sure. Just to clarify, the no phones in the bathroom, go walk the dog without the phone, go shopping, this is for parents.
It's for everybody, right? I mean, it's not just kids, right?
Not just kids, but to kids, you know, you can't go to you cannot go to a 17-year-old or a 13-year-old or 9, you know, whatever age it is, rip their phones out of their hands and say, that's it, you're done. That's not at all. That more applies to parents.
Right?
You're an adult. These are the stats. Stop using it.
Right.
Now, with the kids, it's different. First, I think the first stop is to show kids a better behavior by augmenting your own behavior. The second thing is we have to help kids activate and find first and then activate their own entertainment system, which is what we used to be, which is playing together, which is what America Offline is, right? I mean, you bring kids together. I read that you drove through your old neighborhood and you realized there were no kids outside anymore.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to teach children how to use themselves, their creativity, their imagination, and their friends for that entertainment that they now get externally from the phone. And so it's teaching children how to be in the world. And it's not demanding or commanding. It's showing them how beautiful life is and how much fun it is. Listen, a lot of it is with cooking and being present, doing things that take time. You know, I talk a lot about the world is not instant, right? Mm-hmm. The only time we get anything instant is on our phones. We need to teach that to kids. That needs to be taught at a very, very young age. If you're teaching your kid how to not be on the phone at 14, you have an issue, right? So I think it's augmenting your own behavior. 2, I think it's setting up healthy boundaries. I think it's having discussions with kids. Can they watch cartoons on a Saturday morning? Of course they can. Can you watch a family movie? Of course you can. Do they need computers to do their homework? Absolutely. Do they need to connect with other kids by way of social media, which is how kids connect today? That's totally fine. It's just how much time do we spend on that versus on doing other things? Yeah. But we just have to incorporate basic life things, cooking, chores, riding the bike, walking the dog. You know, a lot of what I'm hearing is kids are very insecure and have this inability to connect in the world. That's because they're not connected to themselves, right?
Right.
They're so coddled and they live in this small space of not being able to create and invent. So these are simple things. I mean, listen, it's teaching your kids how to play dress up. It's teaching your kids how to play theater. It's teaching your kids how to cook. It's teaching your kids how to be in the world. It's teaching your kids how to sit in silence. I think these are really important things that, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just going back and living a little bit in ways that we used to be before tech took over everything.
Yeah. So Anya, if I were a parent and I want my kids to go outside and play more, for instance, and I agree, that's a huge part of this thing, but everybody in my community is indoors playing Fortnite on 72-inch plasma screens on wall-to-wall carpet. How can I, as a parent, begin to change that environment in my neighborhood, really, and start to impact those around me?
I think you talk to other parents, and I think you raise awareness, and then I think you set boundaries. So what about every Sunday, right? We do team block sports. See how that Sunday goes, right? It's let's start small. It's not the kids are not allowed to play on computers anymore. That's right. Not work. I think it's finding balance. And I think, listen, I think tech addiction, tech attachment, however you want to call it, it's like sex and food addiction. It's not like drug addiction. With drug addiction, you want abstinence. You can't do that with sex or food. You just gotta balance these things out. With children, you and I are also talking about such a small sliver of the issue. We're not talking about online porn that kids now get access at 11. We're not talking about 13 and 14-year-old boys who play Fortnite for so many hours that, the back of their eyes get weakened and they need light laser therapy. I mean, these are serious issues. So how do you start? you start, I mean, if you live in a community and there are other kids that live on your block and there are other parents, you literally start creating these communal outings.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also go out and play with kids. I mean, that's what I would do, but I also grew up that way.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I grew up, and this is what I think gives me a little bit of an advantage. I just grew up in such a different, I mean, I'll give you an example, not to get off the subject, but there was an article in New York Sunday Times about Rent the Runway. It's $1 billion company where women wear clothes. And, and the point of this article was that men are not going to do it. You know, I also am not. I just would never share clothing with strangers. I don't care how much you wash it. And you know why? For me, it's such a bizarre thing.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Russia. I mean, we would, in communist Russia, you would wear the same outfit for a month. But obviously, we washed our clothes. But we didn't have a lot of clothes to begin with. So the way I was raised, and now this is where I understand the importance of your childhood versus who you become when you're an adult. So how do you do this? You literally, you educate, you raise awareness, and then you make an impact by doing it. So you play sports. I don't know what sports your kids play. I don't know what what is it, soccer, football, baseball, basketball, board games. And you just literally start unplugging, whether it's every Sunday. Listen, the best scenario is that you throw a game on Sunday and people love it and they're like, why don't we do it Saturday and Sunday? And then, in a month, you don't have to be there. It's just the kids. But somebody has to show the kids somebody has to show children how to be off the phone.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that parents are always on the phone, they can never say to their kids, I don't want you on the phone, because they'll turn around and say, oh, you're on the phone.
I agree. I think it starts with modeling. And again, I just get back to, so Anya, I have a 26 months now. I have like a two-year-old boy.
You were going to say you have a 26-year-old.
No, don't have a 26-year-old. I'm not having babies at 6 years old myself. And, we go out, and my wife, she's getting kind of into this too. And we go out to meals and we see parents just plop their kids down. They're 2-year-olds, they're 1-year-olds. I've seen kids like 4, 5, 6 months old getting on an airplane holding a phone. And it's like, wow, like for me, like life is never going to be as exciting as, for, at least for a kid. Like, I mean, I believe it will be, but it's not as alluring as this app that's with all these things popping up. Once they start to learn that this device is a tool for them to be entertained, they're going to be clamoring for it all the time. And good luck when they're 7, 8, 9, going out to a meal and engaging them. So I get it. It's tough having young kids. Like I've been on 6-hour flights and it's difficult. We don't give them screens. It's tough, but I think it's something that's necessary for people to do, is to just figure out other ways to engage their kids.
So we're talking about the same thing. And listen, there are books, there are color books, there are games, there's so many ways. I have nieces, I have nephews. I spend so much time with children. Listen, again, I just wrote an 8-series course on this, and it tells you how to do it, when to do it, what to say, how to engage. It gives you all these examples. I mean, think of some of the things that you used to do when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Your son is 26 months old. He's super tiny and little. But when he'll be 5,
mm-hmm.
you'll say to him, listen, this is what Dad used to play when I was your age. And I imagine you throwing the ball with him outside. Other kids see it. They're going to come outside. But I also think it's parents need to, listen, I can't go to anybody in a restaurant and say, you're parenting in a really bad way. But I'm hoping that by doing this, by letting people know, and I didn't know this myself, the reason the age of drinking in America is 21 is because the frontal cortex does not fully mature till 25.
Right.
So the absorption of drugs and alcohol to a 6-year-old is equivalent to giving them beer.
Mm-hmm.
Would you give your 6-year-old son a beer?
Right. Yeah, no.
But people, so they don't understand. I think people really need to understand what dopamine is and what it means for a 6-year-old brain to be flooded with dopamine. It's such a rush. It changes the plasticity of the frontal cortex. It's really serious. And, There are doctors that specialize in this. Now, if you have to involve a doctor into your tech addiction, you're at the next level. Restart is out in Seattle, right? It's a detox center.
I mean, there's Reset down in Santa Barbara, and we're doing our own stuff. That's
popping up everywhere.
Right.
So this is just growing. So the way I would very much address this, again, I first would like to connect with parents. It is by their behavior, by augmenting their behavior. And listen, we can sit here for 5 weeks and I can, try to beg you, please don't take your phone into the bathroom. Or you can just read 2 articles and realize that's an issue your kid is watching. Stop doing it. Right. That's the best. In my experience, for me, people say, oh, I just can't be without my phone. I assure you, you can. It doesn't have to be for hours, but leave your phone in the other room for 15 minutes. Do it for 5, right? Start wherever you're comfortable. And then, no phones in bed. If you don't feel comfortable not having your phone in bed, have your phone by the nightstand, but put it on airplane mode because it emits signal during the night and it disrupts your sleep. So it's these little things in which we start to change our behavior, which then adds up. And then, I also think it's holding each other accountable. I think this is a human issue. I think it's a parent issue. I have spoken with people who have these conversations with their neighbors, and some parents say, listen, I don't care. This is how I parent. And I don't mind that my child spends 9 hours a day by the screen, and there's nothing you can do.
You know what's interesting, Anya? Sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
The kids see it too. They see the other kids that spend all this time on tech, and they're starting, and it's making me very hopeful. They're starting to be like, yeah, like he's playing video games all day. He can't even talk anymore. I can't even have a conversation with him because he just I can't talk to him about anything. There's nothing to talk to him about, and he just can't hold a conversation. I've been hosting events, doing workshops over at a local synagogue, a bunch of really bright kids, and they talk about the same things we talk about. So I am starting to see kids become more self-aware about it, but it is, like you said, it's just such a huge beast right now, and it's difficult to really make a change at scale. My hope is that tech companies, governments, parents, coaches, teachers, schools will all start to come together. But we have a long way to go. And I say that because, look, there's still schools right now that are locking in contracts with Google or Apple to make it a 1-to-1 iPad to student ratio because they believe that that's how the kids should be learning, which is on iPads and on screens all day. Although, while the statistics and the research out there shows that kids learn less fast, they have lower rates of retention when learning on screens. So we still have a long way to go. What are your thoughts? What can we do at the macro level to make a big change?
So I agree with you 100%. And I read these same. I mean, you and I must read the same articles. Because here's the reality. It's very hard for a child to go back to traditional learning with a teacher after they've seen an iPad because it's just not fun anymore. It just doesn't. And so, they're not able to accept and understand the content because it's not in pictures and in Googly. So that's one. I don't know how much I would trust the tech companies and the big institutions to help us because they're the ones that put us into this in the first place. So I think it's really up to private citizens and concerned parents and concerned people. My interest in this is really to help save humanity. I think we're sick now. And I think we're sick because we're disconnected from the mother source, which is each other. And so, it's to change our system. I think it's to rise as a community. And there's so many people doing stuff. I believe there's an organization that's called Not Before 8 or something.
Yeah, wait until 8th. Yeah.
Okay, right. So there's, so I think what needs to happen is that we need to just unite, become worldwide, global, however you want to call it. This is a really, it's a serious issue. And another interesting point to your point about kids seeing this themselves, and I have this fact somewhere, it's in one of my decks. This is the first time that we remember in generational, there's no generational gap in what parents and children think about this issue. I think like 52% of parents say it's an issue and 49% of kids say it's an issue.
Right.
It just wasn't like that. I'm a Gen Xer, so before it's like, grown-ups used to say, you kids are so crazy, and we would say, okay. But now, for the first time, we're like, yeah, maybe we are a little crazy. The connection is there. And I've also been hearing a lot and reading a lot of celebrities and influencers, if you want to call them, whatever it is, young people that have celebrity status, that are on Instagram and have social media presence. I read it nonstop that all of them are trying to pull back, because it just gives you a really bad sense of self, and it really paints a really bad sense of reality.
Yeah. And it's not just celebrities and influencers. In my world, I work with a lot of athletes. A lot of professional sports teams are getting into this too. We look at, and then corporate as well. We look at how our employees, how our athletes are spending their time, what they're putting in their body, how much they're working, just workload. But why aren't we spending time looking at how their habits surrounding how they use technology, the posture that they're sitting at, and when they're using it, at what times of days, what their habits are, what their practices are. A lot of people, they talk, oh, I'm working so hard. I'm working 10, 11, 12 hours a day, but then they're also spending X amount of hours per day on Instagram. And then you spend, 12 hours a day working, you come back and it's 9:00 at night. You don't have the time to do the things that, like, work out or hang out with your spouse. So then you show up the next day and you're just that much more tired. And it just kind of spirals. It spirals out of control. And so it's going to be interesting to see how corporate and professional sports teams start to look at this field of digital wellness and digital mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, as a way to set themselves apart and get a competitive edge over the other competitive companies or sports teams out there.
I agree with you 100%. I talk about this a lot with my writing partner. To the extent that you care about the food that you eat and what you put into your body, and if you're going to eat bad food, you're not going to feel well. The same thing for digital wellness. If you put crap into your mind where your brain is constantly processing, right? When you're doing this, and it's not really processing information, you're just scrolling, it's just not going to make you feel good. And so this is where I see the big change coming. It's our relationship with technology is going to change. How we use it, when we use it, and who we use it with. So, I don't know if it's just my friends, but when my friends come over and I have a big apartment and I have games and I do a lot of dinners, I do these personal intimate connections. Everybody knows they're not allowed to have their phones. Now, there's always that emergency, whatever. So what we do, we usually put our phones in a windowsill, and whoever has an emergency, we can leave the ringer on, and whoever touches the phone first has to, pay money, right?
Pay up.
Right? And nobody wants to pay up. Now we're talking about $5, right? We're talking about $5, $10. We're not, but people just don't want to do it. So I think a lot of the things that I've also found in my practice is gamification. I think by nature we're very competitive. So what I sometimes do is I pair up families, because I think if you're battling this on a familial level, you want to have an outside person who's going to help you with the transition. You don't want to be, the dad who's constantly complaining, to your wife, stop with the phone, and your kid, because then you become, this mean dad.
Right.
And so I think it's best when we, and so some of the success I've had is just phenomenal. It's been really fun, right? Because it becomes this competition between families, and kids are like, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lose to them. And then all of a sudden, parents come, we sit down, you do board games, the kids are on their own playing. And it's almost life is like it used to be in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
totally.
And the difference that people feel is what I find most profound. I also recommend that people don't kind of text their loved ones throughout the day, but either make time to physically see somebody or get on the phone or do this. Because then it becomes a much more meaningful experience versus like, hey, how are you? How was your day? Good. Okay, bye. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like disconnect to connect more. I mean, listen, we live through thousands of years without speaking to our spouse every 5 minutes. And one would argue that things used to be better, right? When you would come, I mean, that's what dinner time is for. You know, a lot of families say, what do I do during dinner?
Yeah. Hey, Anya, do you think that, because the statistics and the research actually shows that kids are not spending as much time outside, also not hanging out with their friends. This was really well accounted for in Gene Twenge's book, iGen. Do you think the same thing goes for, we got all the same books. we should stop buying books and we should just send them to each other. But do you think the same thing is happening with Gen Xers, even boomers, and that they're getting together less because technology and the availability of it to help you connect is so much greater that you don't have to get together in person? Do you think that this is true for people of all ages?
I don't. One of the interesting things that I've been noticing about digital attachment is that it affects generations differently. And some of the reports that I read say that the boomers right now are kind of the most well-adjusted generation because they have friends that they were able to make way before any of this came along. So the way boomers use the technology, it's really to enhance their existing relationships. They already had these relationships. It just helps them to maintain them. So versus being on the phone with a friend that lives in another country, they're doing this. How the difference in how it's affecting Gen Z is that Gen Z isn't getting the chance to make those friends in the first place. They're much later into the social aspect of connection. Gen Xers, you know, I'm a Gen Xer. It just depends. It's interesting, right? Because so I'm a Gen Xer that wasn't born here. So when I talk about my childhood, you would think that I'm a boomer, right? I used to listen to records. We had 2 channels. We never had remotes. You know, I wore the same clothes for a month. We had a summer house, but we didn't have plumbing, right? We had an outhouse. It was like, you know, Russian Hamptons. No. So it just depends. Do I think people my age are really kind of all over the place with the phones? Absolutely. I think millennials also, it just depends where you are. If you're a younger millennial or an older millennial, they've also been very much affected.
Yeah. Anya, what you're saying something about friends, something I always do these workshops. I'm doing like 2 a week now, tech life balance workshops, whatever you want to call them. And I did one the other day where I was teaching the kids. This is actually just a boys group I was running. I was just talking to the kids about, I was having them tell their life story in a series of chapters, and they would have to break it down to 5 chapters. And the ebbs and flows of a kid's life was dictated by the level of friends or the amount of friends they had at different parts of their lives. And so we had a deep conversation, but then we got to the point where we started to talk about making friends and friendships. And the underlying sentiment from all the kids in the room, there was 12, 13, 14 of them or so, and these are 7th grade boys, was that every single one of them felt that they had a lot of friends. None of them felt that they had good friends. And it kind of reminded me of like, if we didn't, like how things are on social media where we're like kind of acquainted with everybody and we're kind of connected, but we're not really deeply connected with them, not having these really deep relationships and friendships. And to me, that was really sad and kind of scary that here's a whole group of kids that are 7th graders and they don't have like best friends, like a legitimate best friend or really good friends. They just have a lot of people that they're kind of close with, but they all agreed, we went around and we all talked about this, that none of them felt like they had really good relationships, really deep, meaningful friendships. And I can't help but point, I don't want to keep demonizing tech, but it is what it is. I do believe that it might be this technology that is getting in the way of forming those deep, meaningful relationships.
It is. It is the technology. You know, there's like 1,000 things I want to say right now in response to that. First of all, I think the children may think that they're connecting, but they're not. What people post on social media is just not real. So they're not connecting in any way.
Yeah, they're not getting the real stuff. They're not getting the real organic meaning stuff. Yeah.
Right. Nobody's posting, I didn't do my homework yesterday. My dad is really mad at me and, I'm grounded. Right? Everybody's just like really blessed and happy, but it's just not the reality. So we create this false narrative, which is very hard for kids to then, rise to, because they just see perfection around them and they're like, well, I'm not perfect, because none of us are. So that's one. Second thing, this is where our social interaction and our social relationship, I think, have been very damaged. Do you know Peter Gray?
I don't know him.
So he's phenomenal. He's a psychologist. He's very old. He's about 80. Jonathan Haidt followed him, and he has this incredible TED Talk. I'll send it to you. And it talks about the evolution of play, how important play, physical play, is to children. And he talks about, puppies and dogs and kittens. Like when you have a puppy, it always wants to play. It always wants to physically wrestle. It's the same thing with children. So we learn how to be in the world in social situations from a very young age. So, and we also learn, if you and I are 5 and, I push you and you get visibly upset, I understand that, right? And you say, Mom, and your mom comes, I get in trouble. It's a very big lesson taught for me, right? First of all, I should not physically touch you. I should not physically push you. You were upset. I learned so much. If we take that out, you then have 11, 12-year-old kids that are not able to understand what is it that are you trying to push me? Are you mad at me? Are you upset with me? They just don't know how to respond to that. And so they just get upset. So it's teaching. And I think what you're doing is amazing, because that's where you're raising awareness, right? And so now let's find your best friend. And another thing that's interesting, friends change, and especially change when you're 6 and 7 or 8. I used to have, best friends, different best friends on every other different week, because that's what you do when you're young. That's how we establish, that's what tribalism is, right? That's what human connection is. That's what it used to be. It takes a village versus individual. So all of that has now changed. Parents are also very territorial. They're kind of like, don't you dare talk to my kids that way. But when I was little, an adult can kind of tell me what to do or not, and I listen.
Right.
So
yeah, Anya, as you were talking, it reminded me about some experiences I've had coaching kids, and the kids being completely unable to navigate challenging situations like themselves. Like they just have to go to mama and dada because they just have no freaking idea of like, hey coach, why am I getting the playing time? Or hey Bobby, why are you talking crap to me? Or like, why did you take my glove? Like it's all like they just can't work it out because they just haven't been out in the streets playing and working out those situations, getting beat up, picking teams, and just doing the things that kids do so that they develop. And it's really sad. And it's gonna create a generation of kids showing up at college and into the work world unable to have coping skills and to navigate these life situations.
It's already happening. That's why Jonathan Haidt wrote the coddling of the American mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody wins a trophy.
Right.
Oh, you did so well. You came in third. I'm so proud of you. Why?
Right.
That is not winning. Now, there are different ways in which we can engage our children, right? Nobody's telling, nobody's saying call them a loser and lock them in a door. But no, you just explain to kids. We have to explain to our children the way the real world works. And I think it's best that children learn disappointment in the comfort of their own home with their own parents, which means that their parents have to disappoint them a little bit, which means they just have to start saying no. Yeah.
Anya, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'd like to assume it's very similar in New York, parents and families and kids are so competitive. They want to get into like the best schools, and it's all about, getting the best grades to get in the best school, so we get in the best grad school, so we can get the very best job that we possibly can. And it's created. It's less about like who you are and like what you stand to bring to the world. And I think it's scary because I do think that there's a belief that the better that you do in school, the more successful you're going to be in life. And my belief is that, yes, school may help you get that job and, build up a resume and stuff, but your social skills, your emotional intelligence, your ability to relate to others, be able to pick up social skills, to be able to persuade and to be resilient and to motivate others. These are things that you learn face to face. That's what's going to allow you to get promoted in the job and eventually, move up the ranks, as opposed to just focusing on just results and just getting the best grades possible and making the most money. So if people really want their kids to be super successful, or you want to be super successful, learn how to work with people in a face-to-face setting.
Absolutely. It's one of the things, there's a lot of articles coming out now about, everything is going to be automated by 2030. Mm-hmm. So 10 years. What is going to be really important in 2030 is to have human social skills. So there's just not going to be a lot of jobs. And so to the extent, listen, I don't know, we're standing at a very new, it's very Matrix-like. And I don't want to get off topic, but I feel that consumerism and this constant, it's kind of like a catch-22. The system tells us that we're not enough. That's what the consumerism sells to us. So we just feel bad about ourselves. That's why we can't be bored. That's why we can't sit still. That's why we need constant entertainment. We work to buy that stuff, to get in debt. And so it's like the Matrix where we're harvested. I just imagine it. We're harvested for our energy, right? We get up every morning, we go to work, we get in our car, drive to work, do our work, come home, just to support this lifestyle and buy things we don't need. I'm very much against consumerism. I'm very much against marketing to children. I think it's one of the other things that is really wrong. It's not just technology. It's not that they're just playing video games. It's that they're being marketed and led with this machine of buy more, work more, and then be busy more. So it's hard to disconnect our social existence from our consumeristic culture.
Right.
I think to the extent that we can connect with ourselves and our families and feel fulfilled by each other, by understanding that happiness does not come from purchasing, it never will. It comes from altruistic creativity, kindness, empathy, volunteering. That's another thing that I think, two things that if I could say to parents to give to their kids is chores and opportunity to volunteer. They need to do chores. I don't know if you've heard about this. There are adulting schools popping up all over across America. Do you know what they teach in adulting schools? How to boil water, how to cook pasta, how to sew buttons. We've created a society where kids are not able to do that. They're not even able to solve their own problem. Listen, I hire, younger people to work, to do some work. And they're literally like, I don't have we don't have printing paper anymore. Right? It's never, oh my God, we're out of printing paper. I'm going to go get some. Right? So it's never a problem and a solution. It's kind of like, am I done yet? And so, right. And so I just wonder, how does that translate into the real world?
Yeah. Anya, I want to get back to one direction you were going towards. And we got a bunch of people on Facebook and some on Instagram right now. This live stream is going really well. If you're on Facebook or Instagram right now, please comment. Let us know what's working. If you have any questions too, I've never really done this before, but we could probably answer a question or two here, which is kind of cool. But you were sort of talking about we work really hard, we go to work, we're buying stuff, we drive in our cars, we come back to our houses, and we're sort of like on our own little silos. And And you talked about consumerism. And the reason why I've elected, and I've looked at all these different possible solutions, if you will, to this digital overload problem. The reason why I love retreats, Anya, and this is a shameless plug for my retreats. Anybody that's out there, this is a shameless plug, okay? The reason why I love these retreats is because we're out there in wilderness. We're out there in nature. We don't have our material possessions. We don't have our phones. We don't have our cars. We don't have our jobs. We can't go back to our houses. We are just people being people face to face out there in trees, talking with each other, hiking, breathing, without all the other noise that's out there. And when you do that, everything just gets so much more clear and so much more still. And quite frankly, it's a lot more fun that way too.
Oh my God, I want in. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so it's really special. And like, so I invite you, if I just sold you on my next retreat, we're doing one in April, like come out and like for people that have, there's many people out there who have never spent 24 hours off their phone ever for the last 10 years, since the iPhone has came out. Try it. I'm telling you, everything just gets that much more still and things become that much more clear and quiet. And there's like a general sense of calm that comes over you. And you're not just connected more with the world, but you really connect better with yourself. So yeah, this is why I've chosen to do retreats. I think they're so powerful.
Listen, I mean, this is why I do the coaching that I do. And once you're off the tech, you physically feel different. And so, so I kind of check, how I know whether what I do works by two ways. First of all, I look at people's phones, right? And, I say, listen, we set up, how many hours would you like back? So
yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Right. Like, what would you like to do? I mean, do you want to just go to the gym for an hour, or do you want to go upstate with your family?
You want to take this new class? You want to reconnect with grandma? All right. Well, look, you spent 10 hours on social media this week. Why don't we don't have to remove it all. Let's just take 5 hours and let's allocate that to things that you love to do. See, you think that you got to work so hard, but taking those 5 hours to doing things that you love, that's what's going to make you the more money, because you're going to show up to work recharged, refreshed, ready to go.
Right. And happy and satisfied.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because you just, there's a way, I think, which you can connect to people and explaining to them just what that time is. And so it changes everything. I think it changes relationships. Now, if you use tech mindfully, everything in your life gets better. You eat better because you're more present. You also cook your food. It's a very big part of, being tech-free, because one of the things, listen, seamless. You're done eating in 17 minutes. I cook. It takes me hours to make dinner. I have to go to the store. I have to write a grocery list. I have to come back. I have to wash the produce, cut it, cook it, serve it, eat it, clean it. This is what it's part of self-care. We need to teach that to our children. And so the connections that you have, something happens. And I also think, I've started speaking slower, because one of the other things that I've noticed is we are so fast to respond to everything now. We don't even think, right? We have to process. When somebody speaks to me, I listen, and all of the coaching I do is either in person or FaceTime. And sometimes, I'll just sit like this and my clients will say hello, and I'll just say, I'm thinking.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about what you said. I'm not, I'm processing it, and I want to come back with a thought out answer, right? We are human beings where we have evolved because of our ability to think, right? The space for creative innovation is unbelievable. And within all of us lays inside, very deep, is a human being that loves and hates and hurts and cries and laughs. And so we just need to figure out what those things are. And
it's scary, Anya, because technology is taking jobs. They're taking jobs away. And so what's going to be left is a bunch of people who only know how to work jobs. So how can we get reacquainted with our creative side? Because honestly, I think those are the people that are going to win out and wind up having jobs when artificial intelligence winds up taking so many of our jobs. I think there's going to be I hope there's going to be a creative explosion out there. We need a creative explosion because it's worrisome.
So shameless plug on my part. So I think boredom is kind of like the next topic that we have to address next. I know it looks like a roll of toilet paper, but they're actually stickers all over New York. It's so funny. My friend that live in Chelsea, you see this around New York. So I may be arrested soon, but I think cultivating boredom and boredom has been just like, one of the things that I've noticed about American English language in the last 10 years is that how the tech companies have changed it. They've augmented. They call FaceTime, but this is not really FaceTime. You and I are talking on the computer.
Right.
FaceTime is when you and I are physically FaceTime connected.
Yep.
Instagram is a stalking app. It's not, but it is. Yeah. You're looking at other people's pictures. You're not sitting there looking at your own pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at other people's pictures. So we've changed this, socially, social platform. There's nothing social about Instagram. We're connected in a digital world, but being social is being. So I think we have to change. We have to start understanding what things really mean. And so boredom does not mean sitting in the room by yourself for an hour or 7 alone, right? Boredom is cultivating entertainment within. It sounds scary, but it's a muscle. And so you have to train it. And so start with 2 minutes, right? That's where I think meditation really comes in, and I think it's very helpful. There are 2 apps. I'm not going to plug anything personal, but there are 2 apps that I use, and it really helps me. I use one app in the morning and one app at night for different reasons. It has really, now I'm a very big thinker. I've always have been. And a lot of my friends sometimes will just say, "What are you doing?" And I'll just say, well, "I'm just thinking." It looks like, this is what boredom looks like sometimes. Right? It's just being in the moment and just like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking?
Yeah, totally.
But, statistics say that people are rather get an electric shock than sit silent with their thoughts.
I've seen that study before. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So, it's, again, 2 minutes. It's not, we're not talking about hours. We're not talking about getting rid of your phone. We're just figuring out, how do you balance this relationship? And how does it work for you? So what I provide is individual treatment for families, for individuals. It applies to their life. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, this is not, this is what works for everybody. What works for you may not work for somebody else. But I think to the extent that we can unite and agree that there is a much better way in which we can use the tech versus the tech using us, then I think that's when we can start to make these changes. And it's neighborhood to neighborhood, neighbor to neighbor, kid to kid, school to school, and it's going to be up to us. I will say one thing, just the tech companies, I have a Mac, and a couple of weeks ago, a prompt popped up, and it said, "Would you like to update to Catalina?" And I just thought it was such a beautiful name, Catalina. I mean, I almost wanted to, I was like, forget Anya, I'll be Catalina. Apple is not asking you to upgrade to Brumhilda, right? It's using these very invigorating names. So I updated my computer, and so there was a list of all the things that the new operating system does. New podcasts, new music, new photo app, new watch, new Fitbit, new everything. You don't have to live. You can live in your chair. And at the bottom of it, through like 9 pages of scrolling in very small font, Apple said, "Oh, and don't forget to go outside and spend time with family."
Mm.
So they know that they've got you, and they know that you can upgrade, which I did.
There's little things happening, like it doesn't seem to happen every time, but like I'll have like a dinner on my calendar, and it'll be 6 o'clock and it'll start the dinner and it'll be like, hey, do you want to go on Do Not Disturb while you're at dinner? Have you seen that pop up before? That's happened a few times with me and my wife, where it's like it's recommending that you go on Do Not Disturb. But I think that there's so much potential in things like that. For instance, like let's say that your phones were able to recognize the fact that you're with a bunch of friends, like a bunch of people maybe you're connected to on Facebook or part of your social circle. And once it knows that you're all within like, you know, like the same geographic location, like the same house or a dinner table, it would automatically put your phone on Do Not Disturb for you, or lock your phone or something like that. Or maybe, you know how they talk about like phone stacking, like you did in the windowsill. Yeah. Imagine if that was just a default built into the phone, that when a phone was on top of another phone, it automatically goes into Do Not Disturb or airplane mode. You just put them on top of each other, and it's like boom, like you can't even get a notification. It's just signaling that, hey, you're with loved ones, you're with people that you care about. We're not going to ping you. We're not going to distract you during those times. These are the types of things I think tech companies can do. And these are the things I think that the government needs to regulate the tech companies to do. And I think that's going to get things started in the right direction. And we're seeing small movements, but they're in, which is nice to see, but we need more.
We need more, and we need it faster. You know, by 2030, they say digital addiction coaching is going to be kind of the top profession because the world is going to be so addicted. I would like that not to be the case. Mm-hmm. And so where originally I was working on a certification of, you know, that's how I stumbled onto Digital Wellness Collective. And so what I realized through my research and multiple studies is that I really just want to go to the consumer. I really want to talk to parents. I want to help parents help their kids, save their own time, and just have a better existence. There's a much better way, much easier way to live life. And so that's kind of where I have been, what I have been working on for the past year. And literally I worked for 367 days in 2019. I didn't take any vacations. A lot of my work for some reason was done on weekends, meeting with people. And so it's working. You know, I built the practice, and I'm obviously very passionate about what I do because I love it. I find it very interesting. And I also find it really fascinating when people just tell me, you know, you made my life better.
Oh, that's awesome. So Anya, we're coming up on time here. Where can people learn a little bit more about you and access all the great work that you're doing?
They can check out ProjectBe.com.
ProjectBe, like letter B, then letter E?
Yep.
Cool.
ProjectBe.com, ProjectBe.com. And then
cool.
My personal site is Anya Pechko, which is ANYA PECHKO. And, you know, I welcome social interaction. I have no social issues at all. I'm all about human connection. It's one of the reasons why I got into this space, because I feel devoid of that myself in my life, because I live in New York City and it's just not the same city that it used to be. So, you know, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm here. And I'm so grateful to you. I really enjoyed speaking to you. I was really looking forward to this. You know, we've connected a bunch of times on email. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that original email of what your plans are and how far you've come with America Offline, congratulations. Thank you so much. And I hope we can do this again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Anya, for being on. You're an incredible guest. I also, I will agree with your sentiment. I've also very much enjoyed getting to know you and enjoyed our conversation today. All the listeners out there, thank you so much for stopping by. And we hope you will join us again on another episode of America Offline. Anya, thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy the show, please make sure to subscribe and give us a rating and review on iTunes. You can also connect with us at americaoffline.info for more great content and to register for upcoming events. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to get offline.